ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ
ಖಾಲಿ ಜಾಗ ಭರ್ತಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೊಂದಿಸಿ ಬರೆದು ಲೆಕ್ಕ ಮಾಡಿ
ಚಿತ್ರ ಬರೆದು ಭಾಗವ ಹೆಸರಿಸಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೂ ಉತ್ತರಿಸಿ
ಪಾಸು ಫೇಲು ಗೆಲುವು ಸೋಲು ಜೀವನ ಎಲ್ಲಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮಿಗಿಲು
ಅಂಕಗಳೆಂದರೆ ಮೇಲಿನ ತೊಗಟೆ ವಿದ್ಯೆ ಅದರ ಒಳಗಿನ ತಿರುಳು ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ
ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿ.
Good morning students and welcome to Pariksha Vani. Today I am here to analyze 2 prose pieces and 2 poem pieces. The first prose that we will be analyzing is What is Moral Action? The Eyes Are Not Here, A Poison Tree and Sonnet 73. Let's start with the first prose. What is Moral Action? By M.K. Gandhi. Children, I am sure everybody knows who this great person is. He is one of the greatest men of all times. He is none other than Mohandas Karamchandra Gandhi. He is one of the contemporary Indians. His method of non-violence and truth has won freedom for all without bloodshed. He has proved to the world that love is more powerful than nuclear weapons. Let's see the summary of the lesson. This lesson presents a brief discussion of what moral action means. Children, I'm sure you know what moral action is. Any good deed is known as a moral action. But then, moral action also has got its own criteria. We will learn about it in this lesson. All our daily actions need not be considered moral. See, from the time you get up in the morning, all the actions that we do, it's not necessarily moral. Most of our actions are done according to the prevailing conventions. We're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And why we are doing it? Because if we don't do it, we will get into trouble. It is done to prevent anarchy and encourage social intervention. Now let's see the criteria of moral action. A moral act must be our own act. It must spring from our own will. Children, whatever we do, it should come from within us. Nobody should force you, nobody should compel you to do it. And when there is a compulsion, it becomes a mechanical act. Mechanical act does not have moral content in it. See, we know that you have to do your homework. It should come from within you. It should come from within you that you have to sit for your studies, jot on the points and work hard. But if somebody has to remind you to do it, somebody has to force you to do it, it becomes a mechanical act. In this lesson, we have the example of the king and his messenger. The king has the morality to forgive his culprit. The king has ordered the messenger to carry the order of pardon to the culprit. Now, if the messenger carries the order in a mechanical manner, it doesn't become a moral act. But if he does it thinking it is his duty, definitely it becomes a moral act. Moral act should have a good intention. A good act can be moral only if the intention is good. You may do good job, but if intention is bad, it does not become a moral act. For example, If you help your friend in his studies, but you expect something, you're doing a good job of helping your friend, but then you're expecting something. This does not become a moral act. A moral act, your intention should be good. Feeding the poor. In this lesson, we have seen two people feeding the poor. One person feeds the poor out of pity. The other person feeds the poor just to gain prestige. Now, can you tell me whose action can be called a moral action? Definitely the person who feeds the poor out of pity and not for any prestige or fame. The next example, Alexander the Great. Historians call this emperor great just because he has done many conquests and is very famous. Throughout his conquest, he has carried Greek language, Greek culture, arts and manners. And that's why today we enjoy the Greek civilization. He can be called great because he has conquered many kingdoms, but his action cannot be called moral. Why? Because his intention was just to be a great conqueror and become famous. Now, a moral action should be done without any fear and without any compulsion. For example, waking up early in the morning. We wake up early in the morning thinking that we should go to school on time. Second example is about simple living. Third is about high salary. Rising early for the fear of reaching late to school or office. So you get up early in the morning because you want to reach the school on time. It is a good act. It is nice to be punctual, but it should not be done just because you're afraid that if you don't reach the school on time, you will be punished. You can reach the school early just to cultivate the habit of punctuality. The second example, simple living. Simple living is just because if you lead a simple life just to help your fellow men, then it becomes a moral act. But if you are wealthy and you still decide to live a simple life, thinking of the miseries of the world, then your action definitely becomes a moral action, because you do not want to live a luxurious life even though you can. Now let's see the next example. An employer paying high salary lest they leave him. An employer giving good salary, a good hike in their salary is definitely good, a good action. But if he has the intention that I should give him good salary or else he'll leave me and go, then his good action does not become a moral action. Why? Because he is just doing it for his own personal benefit. Instead, if he gives good hike to his employer, wishing him well and treating him kindly, and realizing that today he is earning the prosperity just because of his workers, then the action becomes a moral action. One more example, King Richard II. When the farmers rose to revolt, they went to him demanding their rights. King Richard II granted the rights, but once the danger was over, he forced them to surrender their rights. Though he had granted the rights under his own seal and signature, but he forced them to surrender their rights once the danger was over. This is definitely not a moral action, because he had done it out of fear. He had granted them their rights just because he was afraid that they would rise in revolt. Now, moral action should not have any self-interest. Whatever we do, children, we should do it from our own will. We should not expect anything. It should not be for our self-interest. Shakespeare has quoted, "Love born out of profit motive is no love." You cannot love a person thinking that you will get something from him. If that is your intention, then it is not a true love. Now, don't seek comfort in another world. Let us not do anything just because we want to have a good life in the other world. For example, Saint Francis Xavier, he prayed passionately. He prayed to God to give him a pure heart and soul. He also prayed because it's man's duty to pray. Now, let's see the great personality, Mother Teresa. What she has to tell us about moral action. She wished to have a torch in her right hand and a vessel of water in her left hand. With the torch, she wants to burn the glories of heaven. And with the vessel of water, she wanted to extinguish the fires of hell. She wants all of us to love and serve God without the fear of hell and the temptation of heaven. Let's do a moral action without expecting anything. Now, to preserve morality, definitely it demands a brave heart. It demands a brave heart that can cost your life also. It is cowardice to be true to friends and break faith with enemies. If you are a true friend, you need to love your friend as well as your enemies. Now, Henry Clay, another great personality known for his kindliness. What he did was he sacrificed his beliefs, his principles, just to be ambitious. Henry Clay, known for his kindliness, he sacrificed his convictions or his principles just to be ambitious. Daniel Webster, another great intellect and a hero, he sold his intellectual integrity for a price. He put a price tag on his soul. We can never know what a man's action is, whether it is a moral action or a non-moral action. It is difficult to judge the morality of a man's action. Why? Because we cannot penetrate the depth of his mind. By now, I am sure, children, you have understood what is a moral action, what is a non-moral action, and you know what is the criteria of moral actions. Moral action should be something that comes out from within you. It should be done without any fear or compulsion. Now let's discuss the most likely questions. Why does Gandhi say that a moral action should be done without compulsion? You know the answer, children. It should be done without compulsion because it should come from within you. When does an employee's action of paying the employees remain non-moral? When he pays his employees money thinking that they should be treated well and they should have a good life. Now, what is the difference between mechanical act and an intentional act? Now you know what is a mechanical act. When a mechanical act does not come from within you, you're doing it for the sake of doing it. An intentional act is something that comes within you. Students, now let's get to the next poem. The next poem is A Poison Tree by William Blake. William Blake belonged to the pre-romantic period. He did not have any formal education. He is called a mystic poet. Why? Because he had the ability to see the world of God behind the physical world surrounding us. Now let's see the summary of this poem. Blake's books are divided into two: songs of innocence and songs of experience. These two show the two opposite states of a human soul. Songs of innocence, by the name itself, it has themes which are very innocent, like children, lamb, etc. Songs of experience tends to be little darker. Now, the poison tree is taken from the book Songs of Experience. The poison tree, it is about anger, revenge and death. Now, anger is a emotion which is there in everybody. It is an aggressive emotion, an emotion which is not only seen in human beings, it is also seen in animals. We have seen the animals fighting, venting out their anger. Now, all of us get angry sometimes. Now, how do you vent out your anger? Different people have different way of venting out their anger. Some shout, some bang their fist, some just walk out of the situation. It's always good to vent out our anger. Now, the theme here, the poison tree, which tells us about anger, revenge and death, it uses metaphors. It uses the garden, the tree and apple as metaphors that allude the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, and the tree of knowledge with its forbidden apple. The poem is basically about the consequences of hatred. See, when you get angry, you start hating somebody. So, this poem tells us that if you keep your hatred, what will be the consequences? In the first situation, we can see that the poet is angry with his friend. But since it is his own friend, he feels comfortable with him. He tells his anger to him. He expresses his anger. He tells him, see, I don't like the way you behaved with me, or I don't like the way you talk to me. I'm very angry with you. So please don't behave in such a manner. He has told his anger. So what happens is, within no time, the conflict is resolved. There is no hidden anger. He does not carry his hatred. He does not carry the anger. But in the second scenario, the speaker is angry with his foe or his enemy. Now, since it is not his friend, he is not very comfortable with him, what does he do? He just bottles up his feelings. He does not express his anger to him. He just keeps it to himself. Once when we bottle up our anger and do not express, it turns into an hatred. It turns into hatred, and this hatred builds up. It builds up to such an extent that you want to take revenge. And it builds up to become an apple. It becomes an apple in this poem. An apple is something which looks very beautiful, very attractive fruit. Something which looks beautiful but can be poisonous and full of venom inside. The second stanza is an extended metaphor. Metaphor is a comparison of two things without the use of as or like. It is an unclear comparison. Now, in the second stanza, the anger is compared to a poison tree. Because he did not tell the anger to his enemy, it has grown. It has grown into a hatred, and now it is definitely going to grow into a poison tree. The poet starts nurturing his anger, and how he nurtures his anger, which gives way to a poison tree, is he starts watering the tree. As tree needs water, sunlight to grow, he starts watering his anger. which gives rise to the poison tree. He waters the budding tree with fears and tears all day and night. The poet uses his smiles as if to give sunlight to nurture the tree. The poet does not show his enemy that he is angry, but at the same time he is very deceitful. He just smiles as if to say that he is happy with his enemy, but actually he is not happy with his enemy, and his hatred has grown towards him. In the third stanza, we can see that the poison tree is getting nurtured. Finally, the tree bears the fruit of the poet's anger in the form of a beautiful, appealing apple. This is again similar to the biblical forbidden tree. Now, in the Bible, we can see that Adam and Eve, they were tempted to eat the apple, and once they ate the apple, they had sinned. In the same way, the foe was so tempted towards this apple. What he did was, he went into the poet's garden. He knew that it was the poet's. So he went into the poet's garden, he consumed the apple, and we will see what the result was. The last stanza, it brings the anger to an end. The foe consumed the apple and he was fallen dead. The narrator had lost his humanity. He went below his dignity. He did not mind killing a person, and this all happened just because he got angry with him, he did not tell it out, and his anger grew into a hatred and finally vengeance. He is glad that his enemy is dead. Just imagine a man feeling very happy on the death of another man. So anger can take you to any extent, my dear children. So whenever we are angry, it is always better to vent it out, to tell it out. You're angry with somebody, tell him that you're angry, and the conflict gets solved. The poisonous apple lured the enemy into the garden. The poisonous apple, the attractive apple, it attracted the enemy into the garden. He went to the poet's garden, consumed the apple, and he was dead. The last two lines or the last couplet indicates that the poet felt solace in the death of his foe. See children, this poem is for memorization, and this poem is a food for thought that anger, though it is an emotion in everybody, but let us never harbor anger or grudge. We should try to resolve the conflicts immediately. Resolving the conflicts, communication is the best way. Communication is the best way because whenever you are angry with somebody, tell it out. You don't lose anything. But if you don't tell it out, what happens is your anger turns to hatred, then to vengeance, and then it can also kill your enemy. So communication is the best way to avoid the fruit of the poison tree. I'm sure children you have understood the main theme of the poem. Now this poem is there for you to memorize. Now let's revise some of the questions. These are some of the most likely questions. How does the poet use the image of a tree to bring out the destructive effect of suppressed anger? Since he suppressed his anger, it turned out into hatred and it gave rise to the poisonous tree. If he had expressed his anger, the problem would have been solved. Next question. What happened when the speaker expressed his anger and when he suppressed it? Already discussed, when he expressed his anger, the conflict was resolved. There was no hidden anger. When he suppressed it or when he bottled it up, that is what gave rise to hatred and finally the poison tree. Now, what was the result of the two incidents? Yeah, there's one more question. And into my garden stole when the night had veiled the pool. This questions can come for 3 marks. Who stole into the garden? Why did he steal into the garden? And explain the phrase veiled the pool. Dear students, now let's start with prose 6, The Eyes Are Not Here by Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond was born in Kasoli in 1934. He has written several novels, short stories and books for children. When he was just 17 years old, he wrote The Room on the Roof. His stories are based on Mussoorie in the foothills of Himalayas where he lives. Now, let's go to the summary of the story. This story has got 2 main characters, a blind man and a blind girl. They're traveling by train. The author Ruskin Bond plays the role of the narrator in the persona of the blind young man. The narrator says that he was totally blind at the time. He was able to see light and dark, and so he could not tell what the girl looked like. The blind man was traveling in the train, and the blind girl also got into the train. He wanted to know more about this blind girl. He wanted to know how she looked. He very much liked her voice. She had come with her parents, most probably parents or some relatives, because when she got into the train, they advised her. They told her not to lean on the window, not to talk to strangers, and these are some of the directions given to her by her relatives or parents. Our author, he liked her voice. His voice startled her when he asked her, "Are you also going to Dehra?" Our author was going to Dehra. So he said, he asked her, "Are you also going to Dehra?" His voice startled her. She said, "Oh, I didn't know that there was somebody in the compartment." So our author says, he attributes to this to her good sight. He says that sighted people miss a lot of things because there is so much for them to see. He talks to the girl as if to say that the girl had a very good sight. Only later, the irony of the statement will be made clear. The blind man, he wanted to conceal his blindness. Throughout the journey, he tried his best not to let the girl know that he was blind. He started talking to her just like any other normal human being who has good eyesight. This girl also started conversing with him. He gave a vivid description of Mussoorie. He started talking to this girl. He spoke so much just to conceal his blindness. He didn't want her to know that he is blind. He started describing Mussoorie. He said, "Mussoorie is a very beautiful place. The hills are covered with wild dahlias. The sun is delicious. And at night, people can sit in front of log fire and listen to some music." He's curious to know about this girl's looks. Though he is unable to see, but he wants to know how this girl looks. Most probably he will never be able to know the looks of this girl. But he becomes very daring. He says, "You have an interesting face." He is very careful in saying, he never said you have a pretty face or a beautiful face, but he uses a very safe adjective. He says, "You have an interesting face." If he had to say you have a beautiful face, and if this girl is not that beautiful, she can always ask him, How can you tell me I have a beautiful face? Don't you have eyes on your face? So he was very daring. At the same time, he was cautious. He made a very good statement. He used the right adjective there. He said, "You have an interesting face." The girl said, "It's so nice to listen to this. Always people have said I have got a pretty face, and you're the only one who says I have got an interesting face." Our author, he wanted to know about her more. He wanted to know whether her hair was long, how she had tied her hair, whether it was she had worn a bun or left her hair loose. During the journey, both of them started talking. They started talking about the scenery outside the window. After some time, it was already time for the girl to get down. During their journey together, both of them maintained a very good relationship. Both of them started talking. They started talking about themselves. They started talking about the scenery outside the window. Now, after she got down, he wanted to know more about her. He came to know that it is time for her to get down, and he wanted to touch her. He wanted to touch her hair and see. As he came closer to her, he could get the perfume of her hair. The perfume of her hair was very tantalizing. As the girl got down on her station, there was another co-passenger who got onto the train. The narrator once again wanted to play his game with this new fellow traveler. What was the game that he was playing? The game that he played with the girl was that he just pretended that he had a very good eyesight. Throughout the journey, he kept it hidden from her that he is blind. He did not want her to know that he is blind. Now he decided that he is going to play the same game with this new fellow traveler. As the new traveler got onto the compartment, the narrator asked him whether the girl had long or short hair. The traveler tells him that he noticed her eyes, not her hair. Finally, he remarks, saying that she had beautiful eyes, but they were of no use because she was blind. See, dear children, we have seen that both of them are blind. The girl is blind, the man is also blind, but both played their role their best. They did not reveal to each other that they were blind. Now, these are some of the most likely questions. Let's discuss some of the most likely questions. Give instances to show that the narrator tried his best to impress on her that he could see during his encounter with the girl. Describe Mussoorie. Now, the story ends with a revelation. What is the revelation? What does the story reveal in the end? I'm sure, children, you know what it is, isn't it? The story reveals that both the characters, that is the blind man and the girl, both were blind, and till the end they played their role well. The next question is, what again? Once again, I had a game to play with a new fellow traveler. Now, what kind of game does the speaker play with his fellow traveler? What is that game? I'm sure you know the answer. The game that the traveler played with the girl was that he concealed his blindness, and the same thing he is going to play with a new fellow traveler. Now, what do you understand from this about his attitude? Who had outwitted whom in the game already played by the narrator? Who had outwitted whom? Can you tell that? Was the blind man or the girl? Did the blind man play his game properly, or did the girl? Yeah, we can conclude saying that both of them played their parts well, but definitely it was a girl who outwitted the blind man. Dear children, let's move on to the next poem, that is poem 6, That Time of Year, or Sonnet 73. That Time of Year by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare does not need any introduction. He is the greatest English dramatist, playwright, and a poet. His famous works, all of you know, there are many, but we have listed few here. His main works are Julius Caesar, Merchant of Venice, Romeo and Juliet. He has composed 154 sonnets, out of which 126 is dedicated to Mr. W.H. This Mr. W.H. is his friend. Now let's see what is the summary of the poem. Now this Sonnet 73 talks about the growing pensiveness of old age. The poet is feeling bad about his old age. He is talking to his friend. He has written this poem for his friend Mr. W.H. The speaker uses a sequence of metaphors to portray the nature which he compares to his old age. It's very clear that he did not like old age. Clearly shows his distaste for death, but highlights that growing old and death is inevitable. This poem deals with the pensiveness of old age. This poem is divided into 3 quatrains. In the first quatrain, the poet compares his old age to autumn and winter. He uses nature and time to compare his old age. In the first quatrain, he compares his old age to autumn and winter. He tells his friend that his age is like a time of the year. Time of the year, the season of the years. First, he says his old age is compared to autumn. Autumn has all the characteristics of the leaves falling, turning yellow and then falling down, the weather becomes cold, and the birds have left the branches. The birds have left the branches because there are no leaves. The leaves are fallen, there is nothing. They cannot nest there, they cannot have the fruits of the tree, and that is why they have left the branches. The leaves falling and the leafless branches where the birds do not stay anymore. This signifies the harshness and emptiness of old age. This also highlights the severity and the unimportance of old age. When people become old, they are not taken care well. They are not shown any importance. Just like the birds leave the branches, people leave the old people. They are not cared. In the second quatrain, the metaphor shifts to that of twilight. Twilight is a part of the day when the sun sets. It's just evening, but the light is still there. It has not become very dark. So it emphasizes the gradual fading of light of youth. He's talking about his youth here. He says his youth is like a twilight. The fading of the light, when the sun sets, the light gets faded and it fades to a black night. The black night here refers to night, saying the fading light is taken away. It is taken by the night. The poet here again compares his age to twilight, which after sunset, the remaining light is also slowly getting extinguished by darkness. When it becomes dark, he refers to death's second self. He says darkness always refers to death. It signifies that death brings eternal rest. The poet here stresses on the metaphor of season and day. See children, season and day are cyclic. After summer it is winter, then rainy, and there's a cycle, spring, autumn. There is a cycle in the season. Even the day is cyclic. It is day, afternoon, evening, night. Next day again you have the same, morning, afternoon, evening, night. But that is not with old age. That is not with the time, with the life of a person. Old age is going to be the final for a person. In the third quatrain, the speaker finally resigns himself to the fact that he is old and he has to resign to it. Now he compares his old age to the glowing fire. He is comparing his old age to the glowing fire which lies on the ashes of his youth, which once enabled him to burn. Now, this glowing fire is going to be soon consumed by that which it was once nourished by. The couplet of the sonnet. Now, the last two lines of the sonnet, it renews the speaker's plea for the young man's love. He is telling his friend, he is pleading his friend, urging him to love well, saying that we must love well because we are going to leave each other very soon. It also throws light on human nature. So it's very common for we people to desire something passionately when we know that we are going to lose it. So when you have something, we do not value them. But when you know that you have lost it or you're going to lose it, you show so much of value to it. So the poet is asking his friend, he's pleading to his friend that he needs to love. He needs to love well because people will leave each other very soon. Now children, by this poem you have come to know that man's life is not cyclic. Man has to die. Though he compares with the season and with the day, but he knows, finally he resigns to the fact that he is old and he is going to die. So before he dies, he just wants his friend, he pleads his friend to understand that while we are alive, we need to love each other well, we need to live a good life. Now let's revise some of the most likely questions. How is the couplet a fitting conclusion to the three quatrains? Bare ruined choirs where late the sweet bird sang has a double image. Explain what the poet wants his friend to behold. Now, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet bird sang. Bare ruined choirs refer to the grumbling church, trees empty of birds, or both. Now, why has the sound disappeared? You may be knowing the answer, children. Why has the sound disappeared? The sound of the birds, the singing of the birds. It has disappeared because the birds have left the branches. They have gone somewhere else because the branches are leafless. Now, why the poet has used the word late? Here the word late refers to recently. Of late the birds used to sing, but now they are not singing. Why are the branches of the trees leafless? Why it is leafless? What is the season? The season mentioned is autumn. So autumn is a season where the trees lose their leaves and therefore the branches of the trees are leafless. Yes children, by now you have understood the lessons that I have already done, the two prose and the two poems. I wish you all the best, dear children. Jot down all the points and keep studying, and definitely hard work will always give you the fruit. I wish you all the best. Do well in your exams. Thank you for listening my class.
Good morning everyone. Welcome to Pariksha Vani. Myself Divya. Today I am here to revise 2 lessons and 1 poem from first language English. Okay. From prose I have chosen prose number 7, The Girl Who Was Anne Frank, and prose number 8, A Village Cricket Match. And from poetry I have taken poem number 7, The Stolen Boat. Okay. Now let us see the prose number 7, The Girl Who Was Anne Frank. Yeah. Now you can see the picture. She is only Anne Frank. Okay. She ended up her life at the age of 16 years. Okay. So early she ended up her life. What was the reason? What might be the reason behind that? Let us see when we are revising this lesson. We will come to know. Okay, fine. The highlights of this lesson: opinion of a professor about the human race. Obviously, if we want to know about Anne Frank, we want to know about Hitler also, and Anne Frank's family members. Emigration of Anne's family. Annie and Margot. Frank's family went into hiding. Songbird in hiding. People of Annexe arrested. Annie as a courageous leader. Otto Frank's mission in life. Success story of Anne's diary and mass appeal. These are the things which we will cover in today's recapitulation part, okay, from this lesson. The lesson starts with the opinion of the professor about the human race. An argumentative young student once asked his professor how did he knew that the human race is worth saving. Okay. The professor will give a simple answer that he read Anne Frank's diary. At very good example professor gave to his student. Clear? Fine. If we want to know about Anne Frank, first we must know about Adolf Hitler. Clear? He was a German politician and leader of the Nazi party. He aimed to eliminate Jews from Germany as he thought they were an inferior race an alien threat to German racial purity and community. Okay, that was his aim in his life. Yeah, here goes Adolf Hitler picture, how he was cruel to Jews. We will come to know when we read this lesson. Okay, Anne Frank's family members, let us see. Anne's father name was Otto Frank. He was a banker from Germany. Anne's mother was Edith Frank, and Anne had one elder sister. Her name was Margot. Emigration of Anne's family. In 1933, when Hitler was issuing one anti-Jewish decree, that means order, okay, after another, Otto Frank decided to emigrate to Netherlands. Emigrate means to leave one's own country permanently. He started small firm partnership with Mr. Van Dan in Amsterdam. They traded in spices. Otto Frank as well as Mr. Van Dan started a business in Amsterdam. Clear, students? Fine. Anne and Margot, how they were having their own unique qualities. Most people believed with their parents that Margot was promising child. Okay, so most of the people were believing that Margot would fulfill her parents' dream. She was working out for that. But on other hand, Anne was very emotional, strong-willed, a real problem child, a great talker and fond of nice clothes. These are the unique qualities of Anne and Margot. Frank's family went into hiding. Why did they go into hiding? Let us see now. When the Nazis invaded the Netherlands in 1940, the Franks were trapped. Thus, Otto Frank realized that the time might come, he and his family would have to go into hiding to save their lives. Clear, students? Fine. The time was not so far, as in 1942, Margot Frank was called up for deportation. Write down the meaning for this word, students. Deportation means there was an order for Anne Frank to leave the country. She was staying in Netherlands. Yes or no? Netherlands government gave an order that she need to leave the country. Clear? But she didn't go. What did they do? Straightway the Franks family moved into the annex. Instead, Margot leaving the country, Frank's family moved into the annex to save their lives. Clear? Okay. Frank's family, 4 members, Van Dan's family, 3 members, and a dentist moved into their hiding place. Totally 8 members went into hiding place, that was in annex. Otto Frank's staff brought food, magazines and books. The only link with outside was provided by the radio. So, who were helping them means it was Otto Frank's staff who were helping them to get food, magazines and books, and they had radio to get connected with the outer world, as if they need to get the news what was happening outside. Clear, students? Fine. Songbird in hiding. So, Anne was at that time, Anne was just a young adolescent girl. Okay. So, when she was been locked in a room, so how did she feel? What were her feelings, emotions? Everything we will get to know through her diary. While in hiding, Anne decided to continue a diary which her parents had given her on her 13th birthday. Clear? She described life in the annex with all its inevitable tensions and quarrels. So, in her diary, in her own autobiography, Anne had mentioned how much tensions as well as how much they need to quarrel, because they had very small rooms in the annex. Okay, so all those Anne had mentioned in a diary. Our diary reveals a complete record of adolescents, that young age or teenage, sketched with complete honesty of a young girl's thoughts and feelings, our longing and loneliness. So everything has been mentioned without, she didn't hide anything. So everything has been mentioned in the diary. She felt like a songbird whose wings had been brutally torn out and who was flying in utter darkness against the bars of its own cage. Students, kindly understand this. So, a bird has been locked down in the cage. Before that, if the bird wings had been cut off, okay, torn out, so what would happen? The bird would be moving and getting still more hurt by flying in utter darkness against the bars of its own cage. People of Annexed were arrested on August 4th, 1944. All the members who were hidden in the annex were arrested. Somehow Nazis got the information and they were arrested. Later, Nazis separated Otto Frank from his wife and daughters. They were taken to Auschwitz. Auschwitz is in Poland. Okay. On the way, Mrs. Frank, Van Dan and the dentist lost their lives from exhaustion. Exhaustion here means due to tiredness. Clear? So, they died on their way. Who? Mrs. Frank, Van Dan and the dentist lost their lives. Annie as a courageous leader. Now, Annie had lost her mother. So, how did she behave in the camp? Annie proved to be a courageous leader of her small Auschwitz group. When there was nothing to eat, she dared to go to the kitchen to ask for food. She was boldly entering to the kitchen and she was ordering, she was demanding for the food. She constantly told Margot never to give in. That means never to accept the defeat. So, in this way we can say that Anne was a courageous leader. Once Anne passed hundreds of Hungarian Jewish children who was standing naked in freezing rain, waiting to be led to the gas chambers. Students, note down the point, gas chambers. Why? So, the kids, the people from the Jewish community, when they were alive, Hitler was commanding them to send to the gas chambers and burn them alive. This was the order given. Got it? So, that's why the small kids were standing in those freezing rain nakedly, waiting for the chance to go inside, to be led to the gas chambers, unable to grasp the horrors inflicted upon them in the world of adults. She couldn't bear. So, being the elders, they are only doing such a cruel, they are only behaving in such a cruel manner. So, she couldn't believe it. Clear? Okay. Later, Annie and her sister were transported to Belsen. Annie died in March 1945 due to typhoid a few days after Margot. Even Margot died there. Both were buried in a mass grave. Only Otto Frank stayed alive. Mrs. Frank died Even Anne Frank died as well as Margot also died. So, among Otto Frank's family, only Otto Frank stayed alive. Clear? Fine. Otto Frank's mission in life. So, when Otto Frank came back to Netherlands, okay, so Meep, one of his typists, his staff had handed over Anne's diary to Otto Frank. Otto Frank took many weeks to finish reading and broke down after every few pages. As and then Otto Frank was reading, okay, he was broke down, collapsed, okay, missing his child. Otto Frank's friends urged him to publish Anne's diary. Otto Frank didn't have idea, okay, that he need to publish diary. His friends told him to publish Anne's diary. So, that became the mission in Otto Frank's life. Success story of Anne's diary. The diary was first published in Dutch. Later, millions of editions were sold in Britain, Japan and United States. So many letters poured to Otto Frank in reply. The great success was the diary was sold in Germany also. So, this can be said as a success story of Anne's diary. When the play opened in 7 German cities, no one knew how the audience would react. After the publication of the diary, this has been made into a play. When the play opened in 7 German cities, no one knew how the audience would react. No Nazis were seen on the stage, but their threatening presence were felt. So, Nazis were not seen on the stage, but their presence were felt by each and every audience. Packed audience received Anne's tragedy in a remorse, in a shame. Okay, in Germany, people received a tragedy in a shame, and they were not ready to go outside during the interval also, as they were shamed to face the light. Clear, students? Fine. Germany's post-war administrators toiled to make people feel the senseless and criminal nature of the Nazi rule. How cruel were Nazis. So, this was taken by Germany's post-war administrators, but on the whole they failed. But the diary of Anne Frank succeeded. What Germany's post-war administrators could not do, Anne Frank's diary did, and it succeeded. Anne's brief life is indeed only a beginning. She carries the message of courage and tolerance all over the world. She lives even after her death. Okay, now let us see most frequently asked questions from this lesson. What impression did people have about Anne? Why did Otto Frank emigrate to Netherlands? What finally forced Frank to go into hiding? How did Anne compare herself to her song Bird? Why does the writer call Anne a courageous leader? What became the mission of Mr. Frank's life? How did the diary of Anne Frank succeed where German administrators had failed? These are the most frequently asked questions. Hope you people understood this lesson. Now, let me move to the next lesson. Lesson number 8. A village cricket match. Hope everyone will like this lesson because cricket is a favorite game for many students. Clear. let me start this lesson. Okay, the highlights which we are going to revise from this lesson. First, we must know names of the two teams which were playing in this lesson, and the players' names are, yes, very much important. What were the humorous situations jotted down by the author A.G. MacDonald? Uncertainty and disorganization among the rank of invaders. All this we are going to revise from this lesson. Now, first let us see the name of the two teams who played in this lesson. Scottish and English team. Okay. Now, let us see the fielders' name. Scottish team players' name were Livingstone, Mr. Shakespeare Pollock, Southcott, Mr. Odge. He was the captain of the Scottish team. A youth in the blue jumper. His name has not been given. The author is describing him like a youth in the blue jumper. The major, Mr. Ogilvy, Boone, Donald, wicketkeeper, professor of ballistics. These are the players from the Scottish team. Now, let us see the players from English team. Mr. Arcot, he was the sexton. The postman, his name was Joe. The blacksmith was Bill. The baker, he was a runner. Okay. Now, the play starts. The author, when he starts the story, is saying that it was a critical situation raised in the match. Okay. When there was a critical situation, okay, very interesting we say, no, at that time he started writing this story. Clear? Thus, all the fieldsmen drew nearer and nearer to the batsman except the youth in the blue jumper. So, the match was in a critical situation, means there was a positivity both for the batting as well as fielding team to win the match. So, what this fieldsmen did, all drew nearer and nearer to the batsman except the youth in the blue jumper. The batting team needed just 6 runs to win and they had 3 wickets in hand. Yes or no? Really it is a critical situation we can say. So, both the teams had the positivity to win the match. A snake through the slip brought a single. Here it is a figure of speech which you people must note down. What is that? That is alliteration. It is a repeated sounds you can hear. A snake through the slip brought a single. Clear, students? So, when the play started, the team needed just 6 runs. But a snake through the slip, they got 1 more run. 6 minus 1, they needed just 5 runs. Later, batting team got a run through a bye. Okay. So, 6 minus 2, it is 4 runs required. Okay. The batting team got 1 more run through a mishit. Mr. Pollock was excited and flung the ball madly at the wicket, but it resulted in 2 overthrows and the batting team got 2 runs. So, Mr. Pollock was excited. So, as soon as he got the ball, he flung the ball madly at the wicket. But what was the result? It resulted in 2 overthrows and the batting team got 2 runs. So, now let us see what was the score. The scores were level and there were 2 wickets to fall. The sexton, the man of iron muzzle, hit the ball straight into the air. Clear, students? What happened? The ball flashed like a thunderbolt and struck in the midriff of the boon, just like a red-hot cannonball with the sound of a drumstick. So, as soon as the ball flashed like a thunderbolt, it hit midriff of boon, and the author is comparing that small cricket ball to a red-hot cannonball, okay, which will be used during wars. And when it hit boon's midriff or stomach, the sound was just like a drumstick. Finally, Sexton was out, but Boone was angry due to the pain caused by the hit. Finally, Sexton was out, but Boone was not happy for catching the ball, but it pained him a lot. Clear? The scores were level and there was 1 wicket to fall. That's why the author is saying it is a critical situation. So, everyone were curious what would happen. Hope even we will be, if we were in that position, even we would be so much curious. The lost man in was the blacksmith, came to the field leaning heavily upon the shoulder of the baker who was going to run for him. So, the lost man who was going to bat was the blacksmith. He came with the baker. He had a complaint that he could not run. So, he took the baker's help as for running. The blacksmith lashed the first ball wildly and it straight up into the air to an enormous height. The ball went up and up. Later, it seemed motionless in the air like a hawk bird. Here the author is describing, okay, the ball stood in the air without any movement, okay, like a hawk bird. Then what happened? Whether the ball will come down or not, let us see. This was almost disproving the chief invention of Sir Isaac Newton, but later slowly it came down. As the players could not see the ball, it went out of their sight. Okay, everyone thought that it disproved the chief invention of Sir Isaac Newton theory. What was Sir Isaac Newton theory? The law of gravitation. Okay, as the ball didn't come down, they thought that this had disproved the law of gravitation. But later slowly it came down. So, when the ball was in air, what and all was happening in the field? Now, let us see. It will be very enjoying narrations given by the author. Let us also enjoy. Firstly, the blacksmith forgot his sprained ankle and set out to run for the other end. Blacksmith was so excited, he had completely forgotten that he had brought a baker for running, and he himself proceeded to the other end for a run. This was a humorous situation which we can say. The other hand, baker was running for the invalid, that is for blacksmith, also set out and he also rode and said Joe to run. Clear, students? The blacksmith and the baker ran just like a high-stepping Agnes. Agnes means like a horses. Together they started running towards the other end for a run because they were excited. The team needed just one run to win the match. So they had completely forgotten everything. The other hand, Joe called the blacksmith Bill to run. So all the three came on. Everything would be alright if all three concentrated on their running. But all three just stayed only at the ball and had a terrific clash. If that was the thing with the batting team, now whether the fielding team did their job correctly? Let us see whether they did or not. Mr. Hodge, the captain of the Scottish fielding team. Mr. Hodge, after a swift glance at the ascending ball and a swift glance at the disposition of his troops, disagreed the Emperor Napoleon's order. Napoleon once informed that if there were many people in the war field, he would not able to reach his goal. But Mr. Hodge didn't agree, disagreed the Emperor Napoleon's order. Why? Because he saw all his fielders were so enthusiastic and they were approaching towards the descending ball. Boone had not bothered about the match, especially after the previous incident, because the ball had hit his midriff and it caused a lot of pain. So he was not worried about the match. Except him, everyone were so excited and they were running to catch the ball. Mr. Hodge made a fatal mistake as he saw Livingstone and Southcott moving together to catch the ball. Firstly, he initiated Livingstone to catch the ball. But after remembering he had earlier missed 2 catches, later he said Southcott to catch the ball. But what was the big mistake? Livingstone didn't hear the second order. So both Livingstone as well as Southcott started approaching to catch the ball. Then what happened? Let us see. The professor of ballistics had made a lightning calculations. There was a professor of ballistics. He had made a calculations, everything, how the person had hit the ball, to which density it is moving, everything, all the calculations that he made, and thought ball would land to the northeast of Boone. Thus, he was in hurry to stand over there, but on his way, he collided with Donald, knocking him over. So, he stumbled on Donald and made him to fall down. He was in hurry to go and stand there and catch the ball. He made a correct calculation that the ball would come and land over towards the northeast of Boone. Clear? Then what happened? Later, Southcott tripped over Donald. The Southcott who was approaching to catch the ball, he also tripped over Donald. Seeing this, Boone stepped backward and came upon Professor Stowe. The wicket keeper, whose movements were a positive triumph, bumped the professor from behind. So, everyone are coming and hitting each other. That's all. They are not in a right position to catch the ball. Clear, students? Okay. At last, the ball came down. The ball leapt onto Boone's head and then trickled slowly down the wicket keeper's back, and it was foot from the ground where Mr. Shakespeare Pollock grabbed the ball. Finally, the ball reached the ground, but Mr. Shakespeare Pollock grabbed the ball when it reached the ground. So, was it declared out? No. The match was a tie. There ended all this uncertainty and disorganization. So, the match was a tie. Only Mr. Hodge, the youth in the blue jumper, and Mr. Punar knew the ball reached the ground and it was not out. These three knew that the ball reached the ground and it was not out. In this way, the match ended. Neither of the team won the match. Clear, students? The match was a tie. Okay? Hope you enjoyed this lesson. Fine. Most frequently asked questions from this lesson. Why didn't Sexton and the postman take a run when it was possible? It was possible for them to take a run. Why didn't take? Because Sexton was a old person, he was cautious. Postman was a government official. He was not ready to take any such risk. Why was Boone angry after catching the ball? Because the ball hit his midriff very badly. What fatal mistake did Hodge make? Mr. Hodge told Livingstone to catch the ball, but again he reversed his decision, which could not be heard by Livingstone. What was Napoleon's dictum? How did Mr. Hodge disagree with it? Who won the match? Neither of the team. The match ended with a tie. How does the uncertainty and disorganization among the ranks of the invaders add to the humor? All the humorous situations you must write down, students. Clear? Understood the lesson? Fine. Now, let us move to the next part, that is poetry. The Stolen Boat. The Stolen Boat. This poem is written by her poet William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth is considered one of the greatest poets of English literature. The episode of The Stolen Boat is based on the experience of William Wordsworth's early boyhood days. This poem is the experience of the poet. The poem is about the poet's experience in his early boyhood days. Hope you can see this picture and understand better. Summary of the poem. The Stolen Boat is a poem associated to one unforgettable occurrence of the poet's boyhood. The poet explains that one summer evening, guided by nature, no one else was there, he found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cave. The boat was tied in its usual place. The poet went there and untied the boat. Then what happened? He instantly untied the chain of the boat, got into the boat and rowed it away from the shore. It was an act of theft, okay, and his pleasure was mixed with anxiety. He wanted to enjoy his ride, but there were different emotions running in his mind. When the boat moved on, there came echoing sounds of warning from the mountain sides. So there was a complete silence. So as the poet's boat was moving, it echoed. There was echoing sounds of warning from the mountain sides. The poet fixed his destination to her craggy ridge. That was his destination. He wanted to take the boat to craggy ridge. The poet's lovely boat had a fairy-like look. As he was moving, he felt a huge and black beak followed him with a will and a power of its own. So as he was moving, he thought that black and huge beak was following him. He continued to row on and on over the calm lake. but slowly growing larger in stature, the awful peak with its towering height seemed to stand between the poet and the stars. So, the poet was not in a peaceful mind to continue his journey. With the horse trembling in his hand, he reversed his course and moved back silently over the calm surface of the lake to the shelter of the willow tree. He could not reach his destination. Instead, he reversed his boat and left the boat where it was sheltered usually. The poet tied the boat in its usual place and went back to his home. Even after several days went by, his mind taunted him of striking sight. So, he couldn't forget what happened. So, that was striking him for several days. Most frequently asked questions from this poem. What stealthy act does the poet commit? Name the two peaks mentioned in the poem. Huge and Black Peak. That is one thing. The another one is Craggy Ridge. How the poet was haunted by a mysterious presence within him. You can also expect reference to the context from this poem. She was an elf in Pinak. She here refers to boat. Okay. Elf in Pinak means a ferry boat. He is referring his boat to a ferry boat. With trembling horse I turned. So, he was so much afraid. Okay. He moved back instead of continuing his journey. About that you must write a note. Clear, students? Hope you all understood this. Do well in your exams. This Pariksha Vani will really be fruitful and helpful for you all. All the best for your exam, students. Do well. Okay. Thank you everyone. Thanks a lot.
ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ
ಖಾಲಿ ಜಾಗ ಭರ್ತಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೊಂದಿಸಿ ಬರೆದು ಲೆಕ್ಕ ಮಾಡಿ
ಚಿತ್ರ ಬರೆದು ಭಾಗವ ಹೆಸರಿಸಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೂ ಉತ್ತರಿಸಿ
ಪಾಸು ಫೇಲು ಗೆಲುವು ಸೋಲು ಜೀವನ ಎಲ್ಲಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮಿಗಿಲು
ಅಂಕಗಳೆಂದರೆ ಮೇಲಿನ ತೊಗಟೆ ವಿದ್ಯೆ ಅದರ ಒಳಗಿನ ತಿರುಳು ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾ ವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ